The show where there are no penalties, nothing is offside, and everything is fair game. This is The Gloves Are Off.
Welcome to this week's edition of The Gloves Are Off. I'm Moses Woldu. We got a great show for you today. Lots of great topics, including GM Steve Tambellini coming up. But first, we got to introduce our guests and my co-host, Greg Buchanan, CPC radio announcer and the Junior B Bandits general manager. How are you?
Not too bad, Moses. Not too bad.
Long title, but we still got to say it. And Glenn Carroll, you have a long title too, but we'll shorten it up. We'll call you the city manager of Lloydminster. How are you today?
Fantastic. Thanks, Moses.
Excellent. I know you said just before we went on air that you have many titles, even people phoning in.
Yeah, every once in a while there's
right?
some other titles we prefer not to say on television right now today, but most of them are good.
There's a few things I have been titled to, yeah. So.
Well, you know what? I'm sure Kevin Lowe, the president of hockey operations for the Oilers, have been called many titles by hockey fans, especially for his comment towards the two types of fans, referring to the ones that pay and then the other ones that just watch, but he doesn't really care. I'm just, of course, paraphrasing. But I do want to talk about Steve Tambellini. He was fired. He was a guy that was not known for pulling the trigger, and the moves that he made weren't necessarily the greatest ones, of course. Free agency, picking up Aleš Kodalik, Nikolai Habibulin, Patrick O'Sullivan, Jim Vandermeer, Curtis Foster, Cam Barker, Eric Belanger, Ryan Jones, Leonard Pacharel, Ryan Smith, Mike Brown, and Gerald Smithson from the trade deadline. Guys you wouldn't be like, that jump out at you and say, wow. Now, how would you portray Steve Tambellini's legacy? He did have those 3 first-round picks, but of course those were because of bad seasons. Where do you see Steve Tambellini in a few years, 5 years down the road, saying, oh, what did he do in his legacy during his tenure with the Oilers?
Well, I think in 5-10 years he'll want to forget about the Oilers wherever he lands. I think his legacy, unfortunately, was a negative legacy. He didn't build a team around 3 phenomenal draft picks. You mentioned some of the names here, and before we were on air, we even talked about somebody like an Eric Cole that he got rid of for Patrick O'Sullivan. Cole went on to a couple of phenomenal seasons, and Patrick O'Sullivan, we're not sure where he is right
exactly,
now.
yeah.
So unfortunately, I think he'll look back on it as an experience, but maybe more of a negative experience. He'll learn from it for sure, and I think he'll end up landing somewhere. Yeah. I'm just not sure where that'll be right now.
In hockey, they recycle these guys. Unfortunately, that's the way it goes. Steve Tambellini will land on his feet somewhere, trust me. If you look at his legacy, yeah, he had great draft picks, but because they were lousy teams. So the foundation is there, but he really didn't do anything with that foundation. He didn't bring in, like we always talk about week after week on this show, you don't have any size up front, you don't have any grit up front. They're all the same kind of players up front. He didn't add to that. Was his hands tied? That's hard to say too, but because you give the guy the benefit of the doubt, but at the end of the day, his legacy didn't get him the playoffs.
Was Mac T the right hire for the Oilers, or should they just stop recycling these, players that the Oilers
old boys
have
club.
been known to do? Exactly, the old boys club. Should they, or basically, I should just say, Mac T, good hire?
Tough. I mean, he's definitely an Oiler and wears the Oiler colors. I mean, when you want to talk about branding, he is a true Oiler that's come into the organization. He'll bring a lot to the organization with his experience, his knowledge of Edmonton. He knows the fan base extremely well. Is it the right hire? I don't know. I mean, he just stepped down. He doesn't have any real experience as a general manager. His experience has been on the ice and with the coaching.
Kevin Lowe did mention in the press conference that Craig McTavish was one of the reasons, or that Chris Schultz signed. He was one of the guys who kind of pushed Chris Schultz into signing with, or Justin Schultz, with the Oilers. And he was instrumental in bringing in Chris Pronger into the mix, that type of thing. So does he have experience, or is that just Kevin Lowe just
maybe Kevin Lowe just talking about? I mean, and he was a successful coach. But you look at the team that he had around him when he was coach. I mean, Greg might have done well there with the Oilers at the time with that team. No, I doubt that. But I think time will tell. I'm a McTavish fan. I like Craig McTavish. I just don't know if I think maybe a more experienced general manager might have been the key to that.
That's big shoes to fill as a general manager in your first GM job and a team that is how many years out of the playoffs, and all of a sudden you're taking over. I know Mac T's saying all the right things right now. At the same time, it scares me. I'm not necessarily an Oilers fan, but if you are an Oilers fan, you should be kind of a little scared because Mac T says, and the way that he's talking, that he wants to put his mark on the team right away, which could mean making a couple of deals, and maybe Tamalini kind of held off on, that he may make. You may see, I hate to say it, but you may see a Nugent Hopkins on the trading block. You may see a Yakupov on the trading block. Guys that, they have a lot of commodities in Edmonton. They have a lot of guys that a lot of teams would be very interested in trading for. Are they going to be the right trades?
And they might regret it in the future, kind of like Vancouver did with, I don't know, Cam Neely, Mike Pekka, just a few names out there. Hey, I want to get to the Masters. It was the second time in a row, third time in 4 years that the Masters went to a playoff. Was this probably one of the most exciting finishes that we've seen in recent memory for the Masters?
It was for
With
me.
Adam Scott beating Angel Cabrera?
It was for me. When Scott sank that long putt in 18 there, I thought it was over. He thought it was over. Everybody watching thought it was over. And then how many seconds later, boom, right to the pin. And all of a sudden we're off to a playoff. But it was a heck of a day on Sunday in Masters.
Yeah, I think it was so exciting. I mean, you watch it, it had everything. It had the youth that was in there. It had Tiger, who's now ranked #1 again after all his controversy. Destin to win the green jacket. You had the Aussies who had never won, and they're making a push. You know, you had 3 of the Aussies right in the hunt there.
Leishman was leading for the first 2 days.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was just exciting down to the wire. And again, as Greg said, I guaranteed it was over when Scott made that putt, and then Cabrera just punches one in like throwing darts.
And Scott struggled all day long with his putter, and all of a sudden he needs a long putt, just take the lead, and he sinks it. And it was a great moment, and even a better moment 2 holes later.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but we'll be back. We'll talk about Tiger Woods and a little controversy that went on during the Masters. Stay tuned.